Hey guys, David Pollack here. David drove in to the house today. He's a really interesting character. I met him probably 6 months ago on Twitter, on X, and you're building a media company.
Yep.
We're going to talk a little bit about that, and really glad to have you here, David. Why don't you tell everyone more elegantly than I did who you are, what you're doing here, and what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, well, first, thank you so much for having me. I got to meet you 6 months ago, and it's the coolest thing because, when you first get into media, you know all these names, but you don't know who the people are until you meet them, and you're like, oh, this is the coolest thing. These are actually normal, real-life people that I get to have relationships with. So it was really cool meeting you in person, and then, having a relationship that was digital turn into something real life. So this is an honor for me.
You came to one of my parties,
I
right?
did. I came to a fundraiser where we raised a lot of money for the firefighters.
Dude, 10,000 of that 40 grand that we raised, I made them hold it back in Bitcoin.
Good.
And that was at about 18 grand.
Wow.
So we made, if they kept it, we need to find out whether they kept it, little babies. But that 40 grand probably turned into 75 G's at today's value.
I mean, that's what's smart too, is taking that money and investing in portions. So not only are you donating to a cause, but you're teaching them how to make money without having to rely on fundraisers. So
well, it was the right time. I knew it was the right time. Hey, man, just leave over 10 grand.
And I trust that. I'll get on the Bitcoin tangent later. But it is really cool to have been able to come and meet you in real life, because people say Twitter's not a real place, but it can be. And so that's what's been really fun about this. But I've worked as an attorney for a long time, and I decided to make a change in my life when I hit 40 years old. What happened was my wife decided she was going to make one of these This Is Your Life videos, and I told her never to make one of those unless it's my funeral. But she makes a This Is Your Life video, and I'm watching this thing, and I'm getting emotional. It's got my kids getting older in it, I'm getting older. And she's like, oh, you get emotional because, everybody's getting older? And I go, no. I said, I'm getting emotional because when I was younger, I had an idea about what I would be when I grew up. And I'm sitting here 40 years old, half my life is over if I'm lucky, and I haven't checked those boxes. I mean, I have a nice family, I have a successful career, we have a nice home. I have a good life.
Yeah.
But it's not what I imagined. It's not what I set for myself. It's not the goal I set for myself.
Right.
And it upset me because I realized that I only have a few good years left to really set myself on a path to achieve my goals. And man, I ran for public office. I almost won. I started working on campaigns, started getting active politically. I started this radio show. I started writing, and I was hustling. I'm like, hey, I want to be on the radio. And they're like, well, who are you? I'm like, I'm just a guy who wants to be on the radio. So I started writing good articles, sending them to radio shows. But hey, will you have me on your show? And they're like, a guy gave me a big break. Let me on his radio show after the articles. His name's Matt Buff, The Buff Show. He was awesome to me. He let me start co-hosting his shows when he was out of town. Got my own radio show. I started blowing up. I started growing my Twitter audience because somebody told me something that was really interesting. Because I was writing these really good articles that I thought. And so I was giving him to my friend. I'm like, hey, could you try to get this at Fox? I wanted a bigger platform. Can you try to get me? Put all this work in these articles. And he's like, David, I love what you're doing, and this is great stuff. But I'll give this to Fox, and they'll be like, who's David Pollack?
That's right.
Why do I care?
Yeah.
They don't care that it's well written. They want to know what X person has to say.
Yeah.
So I knew I needed to become somebody. And that's when I started going social media big and tried to host Twitter spaces. And, I needed to become somebody who somebody cared about in order to have an opinion. That's the crazy part about all of this. There's so many great people out there who have great opinions and can contribute so much to the movement. But at the same time, nobody knows who they are. And because of that, they don't have the credibility.
And they have to have some
successful.
skills, right?
Absolutely.
You can't just, I mean, I know a lot of people that have far more data than me.
Yeah.
But their personality isn't designed to do that particular thing. They just won't. Like, I just interviewed a guy, he called me, dude, that interview, so many people have seen that interview.
Yeah.
Well, he had no idea, man.
Yeah.
He had no idea that people watch stuff on X or YouTube.
Right.
He's like, I didn't know all this. This guy's worth a shitload of money, dude.
Yeah.
He's a champion of a big, big, big industry. And he's sitting there and is like, well, I had no idea that someone would call me for a meeting doing a podcast with you, Gary. And they're like, it was an hour and 47 minutes long, and the guy watched the whole thing. That's the other thing that surprised me about this space. I love your comment on this. I am very impressed at how long the attention span of some people are.
Yeah.
It's not all the short stuff. I mean, all the professionals go, it's the shorts. I think there's people that want to study and learn. They might not want to read a book, but you're literally now creating mentors, a soft mentor in a way. I think there's 8 billion people that need this.
Yeah.
Eventually, 8 billion people are all going to be using this, and they're not going back to CNN. That's the enemy. We have to remember the enemy is the old legacy world. Big chunky ads, an hour of content gets distilled down in about 32 minutes, and the rest of it's pitch.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. We were I was in Knoxville with the family over Thanksgiving, and my mother was there. And my brother watches YouTube. He thinks it's hilarious, right? He worked in media forever, and he watches YouTube because he thinks it's hilarious. That tells you something, right? But we're watching YouTube, and there's this guy who reviews food. He just goes to a drive-through. He has this whole little system he uses to evaluate fast food. But we're watching this guy, and he's very good. But we're watching his little fast food YouTube channel, and my mom goes, "Who is this? Some kind of self-appointed food critic?" And my brother's like, "Well, yeah, but he also has, tens of thousands of people who watch this." And it occurred to me, I'm like, in the old days, the people who had credibility were the people who the legacy media told you was credible. It was the people the
Walter Cronkite.
Right, the people who the networks put in your living room and said, that's the guy who you trust. Well, what we learned was these aren't the people you trust. We learned that they were just saying what the big corporate interests wanted them to say. They weren't actually giving you news, they were giving you propaganda. What changed was when people were able to start producing their own content. YouTube's a good example.
Yeah.
But what we learned in 2020 was that even that, you don't have free speech. You're not allowed to say what you want to say. You're only allowed to say what they want you to say, or else you're deplatformed. Now comes Elon Musk buying X. And you're right, people have a voice now. I haven't watched Fox News or any news network in over a year. I don't even watch. I don't even know who the talent is anymore. When they fired Tucker Carlson, that was the last time I ever turned on, and I never even watched Tucker, to be honest with you. I mean, I love Tucker, but it wasn't like I said, I'm too busy to watch TV. But the thing is, you're exactly right. There are so many more credible people who have things to say, people you can actually interact with on an individual basis and learn something from. I don't need to watch who you think I should learn from and whose opinion you think I need. Now I get to go to the people who I trust, the people I have a relationship with, the people I can interact with on an individual basis.
Yeah.
It has changed everything. Everything is changing, and you're 1,000% right about that. I don't think the days of legacy media, I think it's going away. This last generation that watches it will be the last generation that watches it. And from now on, where you get your news from is the places you view as being credible sources, which is cool.
Yeah.
Because that can be a much narrower place. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, we're still going to go and try to find places that kind of confirm our own bias. That's always going to be whether you watch Fox News, MSNBC, CNN, whether you follow David Pollack, or whoever, it's because, I agree with what they have to say. But here's what I told somebody the other day, and they were DMing me after we had a conversation in a space. They're like, I'm just trying to learn. I'm new to politics. I don't know if I'm a Republican or not, and I'm just trying to learn. I said, well, let me tell you something. You're not going to learn anything on Twitter. I said, Twitter is for entertainment. Social media is for entertainment. The library is for education. What you need to do is empower yourself to learn about what you want to learn about, and then go and listen to people who might sound like they've learned what you learned, and then you can contribute to the conversation. We can educate each other, not just entertain each other, and that's what my mission is in all of this.
Yeah, I actually would disagree with only one thing, and that is that I've learned a lot on Twitter.
Yeah.
Now, I have very good discernment capabilities. You're going to have a bunch of sheep follow whatever their leader, whoever they choose, but I like the self-democratization of, hey, you don't like me, man? Cool, don't come.
Right.
Go over there to the other guy that looks different than me. If you want to talk about real estate in depth, probably should go follow my brother, You want to do gym workouts and health and like Contact Store and politics. There's so much content, so many topics that, and I think the people that have the real content and aren't pushing an agenda, they'll get bigger than the others. Do you ever worry about like when you and, can I talk about your partner?
Yeah, absolutely.
You and Matt are building a media company.
Yes, we are.
Is it going to be centralized around politics?
Yes and no. So
Well, how broad is the topic?
So here's the thing. Politics isn't everything, but politics doesn't have to be everything. And by that I mean, there used to be a time in this country where I didn't know what my neighbor's politics were, and that was okay. There used to be a time where I didn't know what my daughter's teacher's politics were, and that was okay, or my doctor's politics were, and that was okay. But we live in a world now where politics isn't everything. So yeah, our network's going to be centered around political communication, but we're going to be doing much more than just television. We're going to be helping influencers build their brands. We're going to be doing writing. We're going to have articles at the DC Patriot. We're going to be doing things that kind of connects conservatives and anybody. Doesn't necessarily even have to be a conservative or a Republican. Our target audience is America. I always say this all the time. I said there's 3 political parties. It's not Democrat, Republican, and like a third party like a libertarian. I say it's libertarian, hypocrite, and communist. Then I'll explain it for a second. All Americans, the ones that I get along with at their core, are libertarian. We want limited government. We don't want to be involved in a lot of foreign garbage. We want to be able to wake up in the morning, feed our families, make a decent living, and pass some of that wealth on to our children. That's what most Americans want. Democrat, Republican, how you feel about abortion or guns, none of that matters. At the end of the day, we all want the same thing, to feel safe and raise our families. Where the politics come involved is when, as a Republican, I don't want Democrats to do certain things. And as a Democrat, they don't want Republicans to do certain things. That's when we all become hypocrites.
Yeah.
We want the governments out of our lives until we want the government in our lives to keep who we disagree with from doing the things we don't want them doing, right?
Yeah.
So that's the hypocrite. That's politics. And then you have the communists. They just hate America and they want the government to do everything. That, I think, that is the enemy of America. It's been the enemy of America since our founding. It's certainly been the enemy of America since the 1950s. Because as long as America can be that shining city on the hill and that example of how economic freedom and how individual liberty can thrive, that is a threat to every communist nation that's trying to build something that's stronger than the United States. So that is a threat to them.
Yeah.
So communism in the United States is the most dangerous thing we've always faced, and it remains the dangerous thing we face. What we all have to realize is, at our core, we're all libertarian to some extent. We all want the same things. And once we can agree on that, these little things that divide us, the things that we want the government to tell you not to do, we can argue about that, but let's realize that if I win, you don't get to do something. And if you win, I don't get to do something. And if you put the shoe on the other foot, that's not a country we want to live in. So let's start there. And I started my show to have conversations because we don't talk to each other anymore. We just either share information that we think somebody who doesn't want the information should have, or don't you know? Well, I don't care, right? If I wanted to learn what you want to tell me, I would have learned it myself. I have my beliefs. Nobody wants to be force-fed a belief.
Yeah.
But what the left has done so effectively, when I say the left, I don't mean Democrats, I mean the far radical left, the communists in this country, what they've done so effectively is they shut down our ability to talk to each other. And instead we just resort to pointing fingers and calling names. And that's the point, because if we talk to each other, we can disagree on policy.
Yeah.
But if we disagree with each other on a fundamental basis, that's not a safe place to start a relationship
That's
from.
right.
So with our new network that we're
It's
building,
a lot easier to agree what we disagree on than to agree what we agree on.
true. And I
People,
don't
they
want to
stay
agree.
focused on the disagreements like, hey, why don't we put a little effort into what we do agree on and
Yeah.
leave
Yeah.
like, okay, dude, you want to vote for somebody? Cool, vote for whoever you want. But it doesn't mean that we have to hate each other.
That's exactly right.
I mean,
But they
can
want
we
us to hate each
find
other.
some stable data? Wow, we're both U.S. citizens.
Right.
Cool. We have a. Do you like big taxes? No, I don't.
Right.
Do you like going to war? No, I really do not like my taxes killing people.
Yeah.
Period. I don't care what country they're in, dude.
Yeah.
Like, unless you come invade over here, I mean, I think there is an invasion occurring here. Stop that shit.
1,000%.
But I don't. Like, the more I'm on these spaces, the more I realize there's very little real disagreement between most people.
You're right.
There are some agendas people are driving, and most of them are money motivated, even the most sanctimonious of them.
Yep.
I could do a whole hour on Bitcoin and some of the insanity and hypocrites in that space. It just drives me crazy, but it's just the maturity of a new industry. It's just the fact of how these industries roll out. So tell us about what your thoughts are on the media. Like what it's a big shop, a small shop, kind of focused on one or two subjects, or you're going to expand it out and try to build a network? What's the goal?
For our company, what we're going to do is set out to bring people together and have conversations again. we're still going to have our conservative principles. And by that, I mean, classical conservative principles. I mean, we want America to be strong. But I think we need to talk to each other again. So we're going to set out to talk to each other, but we're also
That's good, man. That's a good...
I mean, that's the goal. Let us talk to each other again, because you're exactly right. At the end of the day, there's more we agree on than disagree on. And people are starting to wake up to that. I mean, you see in Chicago, the Democrats now in Chicago are like, it's enough is enough. They're inviting President Trump. Actually, I'm going to have somebody on my show next week who are going to talk about what's going on in Chicago right now. They are taking the government housing. They're kicking African-American residents out and putting illegal immigrants there instead. In New York City, just now, they're running out of shelter space. They took 5,500 kids out of public schools so they can house migrants. That affects all Americans. These aren't Democrat, Republican issues. These are American issues. And once we can start on a place of, that's affecting me the same way. Economics, the economy. When what James Carville used to say is the economy's stupid, it's exactly right. Every one of us is paying more money for milk. Every one of us is paying more money for eggs. Every one of us is having a harder time to finance normal expenses when you have to put a roof on your house. Once we start with the principle of, hey, we're all affected the same way, now let's have a conversation. We can disagree with when you can have an abortion or with the size of the gun I'm allowed to own. Let's have that conversation. Let's find a compromise. Because at the end of the day, we all have to live in the same country. I'm okay with leading on conservative principles, but exercising some give and take. But our network is going to be based around resuming the conversation, having a conversation, talking to each other again. And you talk about media. What we need you to do is stop letting the media decide what we talk about amongst one. That's why I love these Twitter spaces.
Yeah.
Because we get to decide what we talk about, not them.
Yeah.
The narrative that they create is so dangerous to dialogue because we only talk about what they think we should talk about. We're talking about what we want. And that's how we met, and that's how we have these great conversations. A Bitcoin guy, a political guy. But we found a way to build that bridge when we did that space together because there's things that kind of cross over.
Yeah.
And that's in Democrat, Republican, non-political, political, food, music, entertainment, finance. There's a crossover. Politics isn't everything, but it doesn't have to be divisive politics. And that's what we're going to set out to do with that network.
Yeah, I think that's really a great idea because people aren't talking to each other. And the cross-pollination, there's no competition here, really. And the mainstream media doesn't really have the ability to do in-depth. You let a guy like yourself go for 30 minutes on a conversation and none of it's made up and there's no commercial breaks. You can only be sneaky so long and cover your shit until you start making mistakes.
Right.
And smarter people come to those rooms. No, you're wrong about that. Like if you want to tear me up on Bitcoin and how this blockchain and the hash rate works, I'm an idiot. Like, okay, so some technical guy comes on there and makes me look dumb. But the point is, we weren't even talking about all that stuff, dude. It wasn't really relevant. And very few people want to have a deep technical. And by the way, if you do, maybe you ought to set up a technical room.
That's right.
But this conversation is about something else. It can get off, but you could pull somebody's chain very easy. Somebody that's insecure and they're just talking head. This is the problem with co-host. It's like, co-host comes in with an expert and he's trying to fill the gap and you're like, bro, you don't really know what you're talking about on this subject. So he's got to kind of play it safe, keep the room going. See, the whole ego thing in these rooms. Who's going to run the room, give you a break? There's a lot of moving pieces to, especially if you scale. I only know how to build these things if you're scaling it. Like, how can we put 12 guys like you in one cube?
Yeah.
And then you share all the resources, the marketing, the advertising. The advertisers will be easier because the volume will be much, much bigger. You'll have, instead of, how many hours you think you'll put into producing a week?
Let me tell you, I'm on 1 day a week now on my radio show. That's now a full video podcast as well. I probably take 6 hours preparing for my one show. I was telling you before we got started, when you're on radio or in media in general and you're by yourself, it's very intimidating to go, okay, I have an hour of content that I have to fill.
Yeah.
It's no back and forth. It's just me. So I over-prepare. But what I've learned is my over-preparation makes me really credible in a lot of things and makes me entertaining. And then I take that into the spaces too. So I never feel like it's a waste. But no, I prepare a lot. Now, if I do more than 1 day a week.
But how many hours are you putting into the show itself?
The show, well, we do live. We record live. So.
But how many hours is that?
It's an hour-long show every
Okay.
week.
So 7 hours a week?
We don't do every day. Oh, so if you do preparation and showtime, you mean? Yeah, it's probably for every day show, you figure the hour on air, and then the preparation time. Yeah, it's a full-time job.
Yeah, see, I have advantage over some of you guys. I don't have to do the preparation.
Yeah.
I have 40 years of preparation.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, I don't have to go read an article on what interest rates do and
That's right.
or what CAGR is or that kind of stuff. It's kind of ingrained on the inner side of my eyelids. Because I think you could build something that does 50 hours a week of content. Just content, man. No studying, just bang. But it has to come from a big group.
Yeah.
You'll burn somebody out so fast.
Agreed.
But it's not sustainable. You'll get stale, you'll get bored, especially if it's just one subject. I think the only thing you could do is like religion. Religion you could really, but it's not kind of what I want to do.
There's politics in that too, though.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, man. Well, and there's money in it.
Yep,
okay?
there's a lot of money.
If that's what your driver is. I like your driver because, hey, I want to bring people together. Because your bet is if I bring people together by being the glue in the middle, the world's going to be better, and I think somebody's going to pay me one day.
I mean, that's the goal. I mean, look, we all want to make money. We got to take care of our families. But
Well, you need to make money in this universe.
But you need to make money in order to keep doing this too.
Yeah.
I mean, so many people you'd be surprised on social media that are huge accounts, big influencers. They don't get paid.
Yeah.
They don't know how to get paid, or maybe they don't want to get paid. But the reality is, you're right. You get burnt out. You can only do this for so long, which is why sometimes on Twitter and in social media you get drama, because people have to find a reason, something to burn them, to motivate them, to keep them going. And if it's not the dollar, it's going to be drama. Something has to fuel people. So it's either hate, drama, or money. Pick which one. Something's going to motivate you. For me, honestly, if I'm able to produce revenue in a show, not only am I able to continue to do what I do and do what I love, and at the same time do something that I think is my place in the world, to talk, to communicate. I'm a communicator. If I'm able to do that and build something around it, I can employ people. I can bring other people. One thing I love doing, and I've always done this, and this is how I've been, what I think is successful in a short period of time, is I don't step on people, ever. A lot of people in media do. You talk about the egos. People step on each other to get where they want to be. Man, I will bring people along. My favorite thing to do is to be like, hey, have you met this person? Because you never know. I might not have an immediate need for a relationship, but somebody else might. And if I can connect people, I've seen it happen. You connect the right people together, magic happens. And so I help as many people as I can. And as I grow, I promise you, I'll be helping as many people as I can. I know the path to the top, and I know how challenging it is. And I will always help the next guy. Always help the next guy. And that helps all of us.
Yeah, for sure.
But you need to be successful, or you can't help anybody. It's like you got to put your mask on and start breathing, make sure the flow of oxygen is there before you put the mask on the people next to you.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's what it is. You have to be successful in order to help other people as well.
So let's touch on a little politics, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
What do you think? Are we going to have an election in November?
Gosh. I just did.
Are we going to have an election?
I just did a show.
Not who's going to win.
No, it's a very good point. I said, I told everybody in 2020, I said, this might be the last election we have in the United States. I did a show on Monday titled Civil War 2024 with a question mark. After the 2020 election, whether you're one of these people who thinks the election was stolen, or whether it was fraud, but it wasn't enough to overturn the results of the election, or if you're one of these people who thinks the election was fair, whatever you think happened in 2020, enough people question it. You can look at polling. A significant portion of this country thinks there was fraud in the 2020 election. And when you live in a republic like ours, where elections are the cornerstone of our political system, and you don't have confidence in that system, that's a problem. Now, I think some of that is by design, which is why you ask if we're going to have an election. There are people in this country who would rather us not, because the elections is what gives us the power. Our ability to select our leaders is where our power as Americans come from. It's what's embedded in our Constitution. It gives us the power, prevents the government from having that power. And it does it for a reason. It does it because we are supposed to have the power in this country. We select our representatives. Well, if you're the ruling class, what's the biggest threat to your power and your wealth? How many of these people make millions of dollars serving in a job that pays $140,000, $40,000 a year. How do you become a millionaire? These people's power and their wealth and their identities is tied up in representing people. What is the biggest threat to that power and their wealth? The voter. So reducing their impact in your livelihood is the secret to success in Washington. That's the establishment that we talk about. So when you want to talk about whether or not we have an election, who wants the election? We do.
Yeah.
Who doesn't? Them. Who's in power? They are. That's what makes this year so interesting. You talk about election interference. Look how many places now they're taking Trump off the ballot. They couldn't put him in jail soon enough, right? 2 impeachments didn't do it. A fake Russian investigation didn't do it. How much resources have been, millions and millions of dollars and hundreds of thousands of hours put into stopping a man?
Yeah.
And now they're just like, well, let's just take him off the ballot if we can't have him go to jail. Why do you think they do that? What is it with Donald Trump that is such a threat to the left? If he's such a bad guy, if his tweets are so offensive, he's such a racist and all these terrible things they say about him, shouldn't the voters be smart enough to say, that's not who we want as president?
You would think, man.
But you know what it is? He came down an escalator.
You would think he would get slaughtered.
Unless people are smarter than the government thinks they should be. Trump came down an escalator in 2016. And in 2016, when he put his hand on the Bible, he told people very clearly, I'm not taking power from one party and giving it to the next. I'm taking the power from them and I'm giving it back to you. And boy, was that a threat to the very people I just told you have everything invested into staying in power. Now we've been alive a while. We voted in elections. Can you think of an election in your entire life where voting for president made a difference? How many people do you know that don't vote? And you're like, why don't you vote? Doesn't make a difference.
Right.
Doesn't matter who's elected.
That's
when
right.
Donald Trump was elected, it was the first time in my life that who I voted for made a difference.
Yeah.
Look at the foreign wars that ended. We moved moved the embassy in Israel to Jerusalem. We stopped China's abusive financial manipulation. There was no more new foreign wars. My bank account got bigger. My taxes went down. My businesses grew. Life was better for everybody under Donald Trump, whether you're black, white, whatever. Everybody's life was better than Donald Trump. And you know what that was? A threat. A threat because no more could the people in power say, well, it doesn't matter who you vote for. Them, vote for me. It was a threat to the establishment. That's why they don't want him on the ballot. That's why when you talk about whether or not there's going to be an election in 2024, they're going to do everything they can to make sure that even if there is, you're not going to have any confidence in it, which is why it's so important that we talk to each other.
Yeah.
Because there will be an election in 2024.
So you agree there will be one?
Well, there will be one.
Are you sure?
Well, absolutely. There'll be an election. Election day will come. But do we trust the results of it? Is the candidate we want to vote for on the ballot? Is the election that I think will occur in 2024, does it matter? That's the question you need to ask. Not whether we're going to have an election, but whether or not it matters.
Well, I'm going to get to the other question, but I'm not convinced we're going to have one. I think a cyber attack would stop an election. November 2nd probably will come around, but will we have an election? 2 days before the election, you could have somebody assassinated. I bet I could spend 12 minutes on this or in any space, and people would actually entertain the possibility that Donald Trump would be assassinated before the freaking election. People will have the conversation. 10 years ago, they've been like, what are you talking about? By the way, the other guy, someone told me this yesterday, I think. There was another person, a president, running for presidency of the United States, that certain states said you can't run. You know who that was?
Abraham Lincoln?
That's it.
Guess
what happened to him?
Well, he became president.
And then he got killed.
Well, that's true.
Interesting, huh?
That is true.
That's a whole story there, though.
Yeah.
Like somebody brought that up to me today. I was like, whoa, and he got assassinated. That's interesting.
Well, Kennedy was assassinated.
Because I was saying that no one, Maine and Colorado, what they're doing, I'm like, hey, that's never happening. No, it happened to Lincoln. I'm like, really? This is crazy, man. Let's say we have an election, Biden runs, Trump runs, who wins?
I mean, everybody knows Trump's going to win.
Well, I'm asking you.
No,
not
Trump.
Everybody. Trump
No,
by a landslide?
I think in 2020 he would have won by a landslide. I think if you look at just the numbers, and look.
But 2024.
He wins. Everybody knows. 100%. If you look at it, in 2020, he performed better than he did in 2016. and he lost, which is why a lot of people are questioning things.
Yeah.
2024, if you just look at the polling alone, he has, right now, a poll just came out. He's the most popular Republican amongst the black community ever in history.
Black people are going to vote for him.
Ever in history.
Black people have been
But it's not just
abused by
there.
the Biden administration and the
By
Clintons.
Democrats in general.
All of them,
Yeah.
dude. You guys have been absolutely slaughtered.
Yeah. Now, Trump will win in 2024. I'm confident of it.
If he's alive.
I think he will be alive. But the interesting thing is you mentioned assassination, and it's funny because there was a hot mic moment. I believe that people, and I say people because I don't want to be reckless by pointing a finger at who's responsible, whether it's foreign governments, whether it's our own governments, whether it's political activists, whoever. They want us saying certain things. They want to set certain narratives. It's no coincidence that a movie called Civil War is being released in April, right? This hot mic moment, you saw this the other day when a bunch of reporters were talking about Trump being assassinated on a hot mic. Did you see this? Reporters were talking about Trump being assassinated on a hot mic. Why are they talking about that? Was it a mistake or was it on purpose? And now you have people having this conversation.
Totally.
And what happens is, once you start ringing a bell, it goes from, well, yeah, come on, that's ridiculous, too. Well, I've heard it before, too. Well, now it's a bit more reasonable. And then you find one unhinged person who's willing to think that that's their calling.
Yeah.
That's what's so dangerous about this narrative setting. And that's what I talked about. I mean, think about this. Before Donald Trump, did you ever think you would see a day where a United States president was indicted by the federal government while seeking office? Would you ever think you would see a day where the government itself would wiretap the sitting president of the United States? What we've normalized in this country already has already been so disgusting as far as our republic is concerned. Now we've indicted Trump 96 times. They're trying to put him in jail. And you mentioned assassination. How long before they normalize even that as being an option? It's for the good of the country. I mean, we have to stop normalizing ridiculous behavior. And I do get worried, though. I don't think that, look, President Trump has his own private security team around him, plus Secret Service. I think assassinating Donald Trump, God forbid, would cause more problems in this country than not. So I don't think it's in anybody's interest that something happens to Donald Trump. I don't think he's going to be assassinated, God forbid. But I am nervous that conversation keeps occurring. Why are we talking about that now? So if indictments weren't enough, if taking him off the ballot isn't enough, are they going to start calling for that next? It's dangerous. It really is.
People get their backs right up against the wall. Sometimes they do crazy shit.
Yeah.
You know, I wouldn't rule anything out. I mean, I never thought we would have a time when I could say that the U.S. government blew up 2 pipelines as a major act of war.
Yeah.
A major act of terrorism. The Israeli conflict that I know that, you're watch closely. Within the first 12 hours, Mossad and CIA say, hey, we didn't know nothing.
Right.
And then 24 hours later, hey, just kidding, we did know.
Yeah.
That's the biggest red flag for me. Like, as soon as I saw that, I never listened to anything about Israel, Hamas, or Palestine. Now, I will not walk into one of those rooms because none of you people actually know what happened. You don't. Mossad and the CIA tell you they didn't know what happened, and then they did know. So that whole thing is just so smelly to me. We have a dam that was blown up in the Ukraine that we haven't even felt the effects of agriculture depletion yet. Like there's no nutrients in that ground anymore. It's gone, man. Like you have literally 10 years gone. And then who's going to supply it?
Right.
It's like, dude, I'm not sure that we won't have this kind of event or a mega event like a world war, 2 more countries, Turkey blasting some crazy thing off, some incident here. There's all this noise about cyber attacks, if you've been noticing.
Yeah.
There's a couple of banks that have went down. I mean, big banks, man.
Buildings have exploded out of nowhere.
And they just like, okay, we're back up now.
Yeah.
We're a really, really interesting point in not only America's history, but I think the world, man. The whole thing's changing. It really, I mean, I think you're having 2 things. The old world is just getting worse and worse, And then you have this new world that is like really not attacking it, but filling up some holes, giving people options. And I think like some of this media stuff is really, you're giving people more data than they've ever had before, which is really exciting. And it needs teams of people like you to do this. I mean, to, make the time, educate. I mean, it's a lot of work doing this stuff. But mainstream media has given us nothing but advertisements of pharmaceutical companies and whatever, bad food.
And lies.
And lies, man. And when this is one of the reasons I don't do any product placement of advertising. I will never allow somebody to tell me what I can say.
Yeah.
I mean, I've lived my whole life. I could have been a billionaire by now, man. If I would have been that guy that just lied. Like, no, like there's companies that won't do business with me for 20 years, man. Hey, we don't like your politics. Netflix hates me because I told a senior guy at Netflix one day, I said, San Francisco's a fucking toilet, dude, 4 years ago, and it will implode. And all of a sudden I'm attacking Netflix. I'm like, I didn't say anything about Netflix. I said something about all you guys in Palo Alto. You cannot keep running free programs, man. Yeah. Free for everyone. You never make money. And then the banks, I mean, this is the travesty. They get all these people on these subscriptions.
Yeah.
They know the subscription's going to hit Wednesday, but the employer doesn't pay the employee till Thursday. So the employee gets, and the bank knows, Netflix knows that they're going to get a $15 non-sufficient charge, insufficient funds charge on a $9 ticket, man. This happens $7 trillion a year in fees. All these little fees. It's like, the government could put an end to that tomorrow morning. Okay, that is total tax, dude. And the sad thing is, I never pay those. At the end of the year, anybody that gets these fees, at the end of the year, I literally write my bank president an email, 17 different accounts, wipe every negative charge, 15, negative 15, negative 15. Yeah. There'll be hundreds of them, man, every year at the end of the year. Wipe them all, dude. Thousands of dollars. They just wipe them. No. They don't do that for poor people.
Right.
Like you got to pay it or your bank is getting froze up. You won't be able to watch Netflix. It's really, and this is bad government. Supporting, I would say, bad criminal businesses. Come hammer me. I'm a professional, but you shouldn't do it to my system, man. They don't know what they're doing. It's so unfair.
Well, it's funny because
it's so unequitable. They talk about equity, diversity, and it's like, dude, seriously? Your equity, diversity is bullshit.
Of course, there's not equity. I'll tell you. So when I was
there is equity, but I'm not sure it can be equal. And it's not diverse because they're being treated differently.
Yeah. Well, you're right. When I was
look at Hunter, JoJo.
Well, I mean, we could point out the hypocrisy and the inequity of government all day long. But you're exactly right about how they.
But if you start picking one winner, you will pick a second winner and a third winner. They're picking winners and losers. Yeah, for sure.
Well, because it benefits them. Because when you pick a winner, they pay their campaigns. Yeah. I mean, everything comes down to politics, which is, and it's a good segue to Bitcoin too, because when I talk about the political establishment not wanting somebody like Donald Trump in power because he takes the power away from them and their uniparties and their perpetual cycle of just not doing anything for actual people. Cryptocurrencies are that much of a threat to the banks because the banks have their establishment just the same. Control monetary policy, work with the government to make sure they get their BS fees and squeeze people. Being in the mortgage, being in the debt cycle, and we talked about this before we went on camera, one of my goals in doing this was to generate enough wealth that I'm not stuck in the debt cycle. So my children don't have to get stuck in the debt cycle. Because how many Americans have to borrow money? And these mortgages, I think mortgages are the biggest fraud in history, by the way. You go and buy a $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 house, now an $800,000 house, which is the entry point these days. And you're in this mortgage, you end up paying double for it because of the way they do the interest. The system is designed to keep people in debt forever. Cryptocurrencies almost in a way level the playing field. You get rid of all these BS fees. You allow people to transact money independently. It has the ability to change wealth for people and the investment aspect of it as well. But that's a bigger threat to the banking system. And of course, the banking system is involved in the government. And you're seeing all of that now too. You see the pushback against cryptocurrencies, and because it takes them out of it. And that really, if you need a better example of how afraid establishments are, whether banking establishments, political establishments, show them a product that gets the same results without their garbage, and watch how afraid they are. And you've seen it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I think everybody's scared of the right? And in fairness to them, these legacy companies can't move very quickly. That's why somebody asked me one day, they said, how can you be so highly convicted on the space? Because I've moved a lot of assets around into Bitcoin, a lot. And I've seen this happen 4 times before in industries that I would say are more important than banking. You're not gonna, somebody loses a credit card, nobody's gonna die. Somebody taps into hits your family for fraud, like, you're gonna get all the money back from the bank. It's not your problem.
No.
Somebody steals your credit card, it's not your issue. I mean, you're not gonna pay any fees. Maybe your identity, it's a pain in the ass, but no one really ever loses any money unless they do something stupid like, hey, follow Gary Cardone 007 and they ask you for a date and some Bitcoin. I mean, that's just dumb. But they always react the same to change. The difference here is that the governments and the companies, what I call 20th century legacy companies, it doesn't matter what industry, they cannot adapt to this. It's just so vast. And that allows guys like you, me, and other people to go, okay, like I think you're underestimating what the media company can do. Because the change that's going on, we are opening a pipe to 8 billion people. It's not a US market. It's a 8 billion people market, depending on time period. It's totally addressable market of 8 billion people. 8 billion people are gonna read, study, listen to stuff. That's assuming this doesn't end up getting put on a blockchain and we're doing schools online. But I think that happens. And you get to pick your courses. You're no longer a slave to the US propaganda education machine. You go buy an international education.
Yeah.
Instead of taking 18 years, you probably do it in 4. There's just the disruptive nature of this. No politicians can keep up with it. They're gonna fight, and technology is gonna go, you can fight all you want, we're squeezing in here, man. And it's gonna go exploit all the inefficiencies, all the biggest areas that, I know, not to be controversial, but just the Israeli thing and the Palestinian thing, I've never seen where there's at least both sides having a voice.
Yeah.
Like, there is a more, at least, equal voice and volume. I think that's good. I'm learning more about, oh wow, there's other things going on here. There's another, it never dawned on me, where is Palestine? Well, there is no Palestine.
Right.
There's no country. I'm like, what do you mean? How can you have someone called a Palestinian, but you have no country? Now, I don't want to get into that, but I fucking
it's interesting
didn't know
that you never thought
shit,
about.
dude.
Right.
I'm like, really? Haven't they been around a lot longer than Americans? They have no country? How the hell did that happen? I'm so stupid on most history, probably because we ain't been told the truth on most all of it.
Isn't that interesting? That is the most interesting thing about everything. I was on a
about everything.
Right. I was on a ride at Disney with a friend of mine who's a computer engineer. But we're sitting on a ride. And you ever been on Spaceship Earth at Epcot? You know the part where you sit around and nothing happens while you're in the stars before you go backwards and pick your future? Anyway, we're sitting on this was years ago. We're sitting on this ride, and he's like, hey, Dave, remember when we used to be able to lie to each other before Google?
Yeah.
And you would just have to choose whether or not your friend was a liar?
Totally.
And then Google came along, and you could fact check your friend and be like, oh, dude, you're a liar. And then we realized that the internet lies. And now we're back to a place where basically you have to figure out if your friend's a liar or not, because now you can get lied to everywhere. That's the world we live in now, is that you can't trust any information because all of it's propagated from somewhere.
Yeah.
It makes you question everything, the history you've been taught. It makes you question what you learn, what people say. And people say this more now than ever before, and I think that's what's so awesome. Is that, you know what they say? They say, what's your source? Where are you getting that from?
Come here.
You know?
Come here.
And that's the issue. The question about where you're getting your information from.
All the way down.
is the most exciting thing.
Yeah.
Because people aren't just going, oh, well, I heard it on Tucker.
Where's your source?
I heard it on Hannity.
Yeah, that
so it
don't
must
work
be true.
anymore.
I heard it from Rachel Maddow. Now they're like,
what's your source?
What's your source?
Totally.
The fact that Americans are asking people to determine whether or not they're credible before accepting something as being true, that is probably the most important breakthrough
Yep,
of
I agree with you,
everything
David.
that's happened recently. Is people
Totally
are taking the
agree with you.
responsibility themselves to decide whether or not somebody's lying to them.
Yep.
And we've been groomed to accept people as truth tellers, and now that facade has been destroyed, and now we're taking it upon ourselves to determine who's credible. And that is what's so cool about the age we live in right now and the access to information.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It's opening people's mind to ask questions. Like, I love being challenged.
Yeah.
Like, my space will always be a cool space because people
Yeah.
can go, hey, I think this is full of shit, man. Oh, okay, let's talk about it, dude.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's run the numbers or run out the thesis. I don't have to be right. I'm cool with being wrong.
Let's have a
Correct me as
conversation.
soon as you possibly can if I'm going down the wrong road.
Let's educate each other.
Totally.
I say that all the time when I talk to a liberal, when I say this, because I can talk to anybody. I'm not one of these people who are like, well, if you're a liberal, I'm not talking to you.
Yeah.
But a liberal will do that to me. And I can't tell you throughout my entire, I used to be very private with my politics until I ran for office. I'm like, oh, screw it. Now everybody knows who I am anyway. And you know what? If they judge me or if they want to not be friends with me because I disagree with them, that's not a friend I want anyway.
Right.
And I lost some friends that way, by the way. But the interesting thing is, you know, once you start having that conversation, like, well, do you support Trump? I'm like, yeah. Like, well, I'm not talking to you. I'm like, well, let's pause.
Yeah.
I haven't said, do you support Biden? I'm not talking to you. Do you support
right.
Hillary? So
Right.
why are you approaching me with a different standard? How about let's talk about why I support Trump? And when I tell them, they're like, oh, somebody said to me once, like, that's interesting. I assume because you're a Trump supporter, you must be this person. And then you talk to me and I realize you're not this person.
Right.
Well, why don't you have those conversations more often rather than just shoot somebody down, put some garbage in their comments and assume somebody is somebody based on their politics? Understand what the foundation of their politics are and understand more about people. And I think that is, again, what I've always tried to do is pull down that veil and say, let's understand why we are who we are. We don't have to agree with each other, but understand that there's more to somebody that informs their opinion than just what's usually boiled down to the red meat. But you know what? We live in such a red meat society where people aren't willing to even challenge themselves. And
Do you
that's
think
what
it's
we've got to work
changing,
on.
though? Because I think this rubber band snap with COVID,
Yeah.
you know, where you really polarized everyone. Okay, we need a 50-50 vote. This is the deal. Hey, we don't want a tiebreaker.
Yeah.
We want it equal, so Congress or whoever can decide that. Do you think that polarization is getting ready to snap back, or are you seeing it begin to snap back?
Yeah, you know, I think what the difference is, people are not as polarized anymore because things are affecting them more broadly.
Well, they're starting to realize
We're all screwed together.
What got them on the extreme might not have been true. I mean, the COVID thing, everybody taking the vaccine, who trusts anyone anymore?
Well, we said it from the beginning.
Can you wait to walk into the hospital, dude?
right,
and get a shot?
Right.
A shot on anything?
Yeah.
Like, I've had 13 surgeries. I'm like, I've never questioned a doctor.
Isn't that weird?
I have never questioned a doctor. If I go into the hospital again, I'll probably have to do a knee surgery. Dude, I want releases from them.
Yeah.
I actually want all my pharmaceuticals on the blockchain. I don't want a nurse making a mistake, sticking COVID-19 shit into a accidentally or maybe not so accidentally. I can't even believe I'm saying that, okay? I've lost faith in all the religious leaders. I've lost faith in almost all the doctors, dude.
Yeah.
My doctor didn't suggest I go take this shit.
Yeah.
He said, absolutely don't take it, bro. What are you talking about? I'm 65, man. I was in the window.
Yeah.
And he's like, don't take that shit, dude. This isn't real. If you don't have a doctor that didn't tell you that, he's a criminal, man.
Yeah.
Like if you didn't know, you're either stupid, okay? But you moved away from your hypocritical oath, which was do no harm.
Yeah.
And if you didn't know, why wouldn't you say, hey, let me send you to another person?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, really? You didn't know? And if you did know, why did you advise me to get this shot? Because don't tell me you didn't have time to do the like you're the doctor, bro. You know, like who else do you look up to more than a doctor? No one. No one, man. No cops, no government. The doctor, you're like, yes, sir, I'll take the shot.
That's an interesting point that you mentioned.
Dude, it's heinous.
Well,
it's heinous what happened here, okay?
Well, it's interesting that you say, who do you trust if not your doctor? And then you mentioned the police. where are we now? You talk about 50-50, and I think, I think I figured it out. The left, in my opinion, has tried to destroy our most fundamental institutions on purpose. Because if you can't trust anybody, who do you trust but the government, right? Which I don't, obviously that's not what I subscribe to, but that's their belief. But understand, if you don't trust police anymore, remember what they did to police in 2020. If you don't trust the courts anymore, look what they've done to Clarence Thomas and Brett Kavanaugh and the entire Supreme Court legitimacy. If you don't trust your doctor anymore, because look what happened with COVID. If you destroy all of people's faiths in these sacred institutions, who do you trust? Now, their answer is us, the government, big G. But people are smarter than that. And I think the reason why we're not so divided is because rather than turn to the government, which is what they want us to do, I think we turn to each other.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's what you're starting to see. We're starting to ask those questions, and that's why we're not 50-50 anymore.
Yeah, because they've done such a poor job. I mean, they've really betrayed everyone.
Yeah.
They have really betrayed everyone. See, I think this is getting to, that's why I asked you about November 24th, because I think we're getting to a boiling point. And as apathetic as we have been as a nation, there comes a point when the Canadians now look like Germans to me. They'll report anybody. Oh, he's breaking the law. They'll literally they'll call Trudeau up. Hey, this guy's got too much real estate, those Canadians have become so apathetic, it's disgusting. Like they just do whatever. Yeah. They're protecting Justin Trudeau, who just seems like an incompetent idiot. And then you look at Germany and go, wow, they're like Germany, man. They're just like, tell me whatever to do. I am being programmed. I am a German. I will, yes, agree. But I think people are forgetting, hey, their energy prices just went up 2,000%. Yeah. Okay, they're broke.
Yeah.
Guess what? They were rioting in Germany 2 weeks ago the streets, man.
The people.
This has never happened in Germany. This shit doesn't happen in Germany and Canada. It's beginning to happen because you've just torn any trust away from these people. You can't pay $2,000 a kilowatt for power because we blew some pipes up, man. And then we get long-term contracts back to the Germans. It's anyway. What's do you get ever down about it? Like, wow.
All the time, actually.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's hard. You get so overwhelmed by it sometimes.
Yes.
And you just feel like, what's the point?
Well, you wonder where it's going to end.
Yeah.
It's got to either spin up or spin down. This is the problem with the guys you're talking about.
Yeah.
I don't even call it Democrats. I call them sociopaths.
Yeah.
And they will, if you give them enough rope, they'll hang themselves, man. We should just stop telling people that the lesbian, LBGQT, XYZ, whatever that deal is.
Yeah.
I've been saying, bro, just let them run with it, man. Even at the schools. Let them blow it into Target and Budweiser. Yeah. We'll see how long this crap will last. Let them do it. My children, 14 and 16, they think it's the dumbest thing. Yeah. They're looking around going, we have two people that are confused in the school of 900 about whether they are a boy or a girl or whether they like a boy or a girl. And by the way, they're 14.
Yeah.
And we are stopping everything in the school for these two people. And my kids are nice, but they're looking around going, we don't trust any of these adults. Right. They're not going to, zero trust, man. It's going to be zero trust. Teachers, judges, cops. And that creates a rebellion every time. And we're kind of near 100 years since we had a monster rebellion.
Yeah. Well,
this feels very much like the 60s to me.
It does, but what's interesting is where this all ends, and you're exactly right. It's about overplaying the hand.
No, totally.
And I think they have overplayed their hand to some extent, and I think people are waking up to it and starting to get sick of it. I do.
You know what happens when somebody overplays their hand?
They
have
lose.
To continue overplaying it.
Yeah.
See,
well, they do.
You can't come back from that. You can't go, okay, now I'm going to bet $1 and go smile. No, you got to keep tripling down.
Yeah.
Dude. Like, these people are crazy.
I think that's I've said this. I think we're on the verge of a renaissance, a conservative renaissance in this country. Because like I said earlier.
Violent? Or
no.
Not violent.
No. I don't think there's going to be violence. I really don't. Because I don't think there's enough people. Now, I think if
I
there
think
is,
there already has been violence, man.
but I think if there,
40% of people got a vaccine they didn't need.
well,
Violent,
yeah,
man.
that is
That's
violence.
violent.
But what I'm saying is I
We don't
think
even
there's
know
gonna
what
be a
the
violent
replication-
uprising. I don't think there. I think, and I'll tell you why. I think at the end of the day, there's not enough people that would disagree with what everybody's upset about. But, and this is what concerns me about the Civil War narrative that you're starting to hear in that movie coming out.
Yeah.
January 6th is a perfect example. Look what they did to people on January 6th. And I'm not talking about the people who, like, you stole a lectern or whatever. I'm talking about moms that went in to take a picture, grandmas who were sitting with a purse. We're not talking about violent people. We're talking about people who were standing outside of the Capitol, not even in the Capitol. They were charged with felonies. They were made an example out of. And from that point forward, everybody hesitated on their speech, worried about whether or not they're going to be labeled an insurrectionist.
Yeah.
So the problem is, if there's any violence at all, they will paint everybody who disagrees with the government or with an election or whatever as violent extremists. And that's where the risk of violence being manipulated to suppress our rights becomes a factor. But I think, look, remember how the Revolutionary War started, right? It was a bunch of people who were upset about something, but that's not what started the war. It was the king's reaction to what they were doing that pissed off enough people that we ended up having a Revolutionary War.
Yeah.
So they can poke people, but when people react to that poking, but when the government decides that they're going to punish everybody because of the actions of a few, well, that becomes everybody's fight. And those are honestly your two options. I don't think there's enough people that are on their side.
Yeah. Well, you think everybody's kind of slipped into apathy.
I said most of us are libertarian. I said all of us are libertarian, and we're all hypocrites, except for the communists. So you just kind of decide which kind of hypocrite you are. But at our core, we all believe the same thing. All Americans are organized under the same Constitution, and we believe in God-given rights, that we delegate certain powers to the government. The rest is ours. Most Americans agree on that, even the ones that haven't been taught it.
Yeah.
Most Americans agree on that. And at the end of the day, I am optimistic. But you're right, it gets hard because I'll tell you what, it'd be a lot easier for me to go back into the shadows, go back to my normal life, not worry about my kids' parents finding out my politics, my business interests finding out my politics. It would be much easier not to have people screaming at me, calling me names.
Yeah.
It would be much easier not to have to put this much work into a side hustle that doesn't always pay.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we all end up in the same place.
I hope humanity has at least 2 or 3% of the people that really raise their flag like you're doing and going, hey, look, this isn't cool. Let's try and help, not hurt. And I think that's what you're trying to do, bringing people together. Where do people follow you, David?
So you can find me on Twitter at The Pollack Show, the Pollack Show. You can go to my website, thedavidpollackshow.com. I'm over on pill.net, which is a new platform that we've been on. You can find me at David Pollack. I'm everywhere.
Yep.
But if you go to my social media handle at The Pollack Show, you'll basically find everything you need. And that's where people can find me. My radio show airs locally in Orlando on Monday nights, 7 to 8 p.m., but we record it, and you can watch it anywhere on any of the platforms, on Rumble or any of your favorite platforms. I also have a podcast if you just want the audio of my show, and it's on every platform as well.
That's cool. You guys should follow David. He's doing some really good work. I pop in on his shows every now and then. He pops in on mine on Bitcoin from time to time. So really good guy here, local Florida boy. You guys follow him and help him build his community up. That's what he's trying to do. You got to tweet, subscribe, do all the algorithmic voodoo. Great to have you here, man.
Yeah,
really. Thank you so
much.
much.